She walked onto that stage like she owned it, cracked jokes that made America howl with laughter, and became Johnny Carson's chosen one. He called her his golden girl, gave her the permanent guest host chair, and handed her a spotlight most comedians would kill for. Then one day, without warning, without explanation, she was gone. Not just from the show, but erased. Her name became a whisper, her clips buried, her existence on The Tonight Show scrubbed from history like she'd never mattered at all. No dramatic confrontation, no public falling out, just cold, calculated silence. And here's the terrifying part, she wasn't alone. Behind Johnny Carson's $1 million smile and perfectly timed punchlines was a man who could end your career with nothing more than a turn back and a closed door. This is the story of how America's most beloved late-night host became Hollywood's most feared gatekeeper, and what happened to those who dared cross him. There was an era in Hollywood when everything ran through one desk, one microphone, one man. If you wanted to matter, you needed those 5 minutes on The Tonight Show. Stand-up comedians knew that landing that coveted spot meant the difference between playing dingy clubs forever and selling out theaters coast to coast. Actors understood that a good interview with Johnny could turn a mediocre movie into a box office hit. Musicians counted on that performance slot to launch albums up the charts. But what most people watching at home never understood was the unspoken rule that governed it all. Johnny Carson didn't just give you a career, he owned it. And if you forgot that, even for a moment, you'd learn the hardest lesson Hollywood had to teach. The power wasn't just in the ratings, though those were staggering. Millions of Americans ended their day with Johnny, letting his voice be the last thing they heard before sleep. The real power was in the ecosystem he controlled. Bookers at other shows watched to see who Johnny approved of. Studio executives greenlit projects based on who got the Carson wave, that magical gesture inviting a comedian to sit on the couch after their set. Agents built entire careers around getting their clients those precious minutes. And everyone, from the biggest stars to the newest faces, understood one fundamental truth: you could survive. Without a lot of things in Hollywood, but you couldn't survive being on Johnny Carson's bad side. Most of the time it was subtle. Someone would stop getting booked, and if you asked around, you'd get vague answers. Johnny's not interested right now. We're going in a different direction. You know how it is. Nobody said the word band out loud, but everyone knew. The silence itself was the message, and that silence could be devastating. Careers that took decades to build could crumble in months. Comedians who'd worked their whole lives to get to that level suddenly found themselves back in obscurity, watching younger performers take the spots that used to be theirs. The cruelest part was how unnecessary it often seemed. Sometimes it was a joke that landed wrong, a moment of upstaging, a business decision that felt like betrayal. Other times it was something so small you'd never see it coming. Johnny Carson built his empire on a foundation of perfect timing, effortless charm, and an image of the nice guy next door who just happened to be impossibly quick-witted. He created characters like Karnak the Magnificent, wearing ridiculous fortune-teller costumes and pulling laughs from the simplest setups. He perfected the art of the reaction shot, making a single raised eyebrow funnier than most comedians' entire acts. He invented the template that every late-night host still follows today: the monologue. The desk pieces, the celebrity interviews, the musical performances. David Letterman, Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, they're all doing variations of what Johnny created. For 30 years, he didn't just host a show, he was late-night television. But that nice guy image hid something darker. Johnny Carson demanded absolute control, absolute loyalty, and absolute deference. He could be generous, mentoring young comedians and launching careers with a single appearance. But he could also be ruthless, cutting people out with surgical precision and never looking back. The thing that made him most dangerous was how calm it all was. No screaming matches, no public feuds, just silence. And in Hollywood, silence from Johnny Carson was louder than any insult. Take Joan Rivers. She'd been grinding in comedy clubs for years, getting rejected, being told she was too old at 31. Johnny brought her onto The Tonight Show in the 1960s when female comedians were practically unheard of. He told America they'd be hearing a lot about her, and overnight, everything changed. He made her a regular guest and eventually gave her the permanent guest host position, the first woman to hold that role. For years, they seemed like the perfect partnership. But NBC had other plans. When executives told her she wasn't being considered for the top spot, Fox offered her a groundbreaking opportunity, her own late-night show. It was everything she'd worked for, but here's where it went wrong. She didn't tell Johnny first. She took the deal, and he found out through industry gossip. For a man who valued loyalty above everything, this was the ultimate betrayal. Johnny's response was surgical and permanent. He hung up when she called, never read her letters, refused every attempt at reconciliation. Anyone who appeared on her Fox show wasn't welcome on The Tonight Show. Her name disappeared from the show's history, clips buried for decades. She wrote him a letter every single year, hoping for just one word back, but nothing ever came. When Johnny died in 2005, Joan said she cried because she'd lost her mentor, and they'd never gotten the chance to make things right. The Joan River situation became legendary, but it wasn't unique. Rich Little found himself out after doing too many Johnny Carson impressions. The official story was his material had gone stale, but the real reason, Johnny didn't like being the subject of someone else's jokes. Dana Carvey discovered the same thing when he did a Carson impression while promoting Wayne's World. Carson didn't say a word publicly, but Carvey never got invited back. Then there were the live disasters. Bobcat Goldthwait decided to light a chair on fire during an appearance, on purpose, on live television. The network was furious. Bobcat was banned immediately, arrested and convicted of arson, fined thousands of dollars, and forced to make public service announcements about fire safety. That one moment destroyed his relationship with late-night television permanently. But some bands were quieter. Howie Mandel, early in his career, brought a giant stuffed tiger on stage without clearing it with producers. Johnny Carson hated surprises that messed with the show's rhythm. After that night, Howie simply stopped getting invited back. Lola Falana spoke openly about racism in the industry during one appearance, honest and bold about being a black woman in showbiz. Johnny wasn't ready for that conversation, and America wasn't ready to hear it. Lola never got another invite. The feud with Wayne Newton showed a different side of Johnny's vindictiveness. They'd been friendly for years, but when Newton outbid Carson for partial ownership of the Aladdin Hotel, something shifted. To Newton, it was just business. To Carson, it felt personal. Night after night, Johnny started making jokes about Wayne, poking at his appearance, questioning his masculinity. The audience laughed, but Newton wasn't amused. Eventually, Wayne stormed into NBC studios, found Carson backstage, and told him face-to-face to knock it off. The joke stopped, but so did their friendship. Wayne Newton never appeared on The Tonight Show again. Understanding Carson's power means understanding the man behind it. He wasn't born into showbiz royalty. He was a kid from Nebraska who started doing magic tricks at 12. He served in World War II, got a degree in radio and speech, and climbed the ladder one small gig at a time. When he filled in for Jack Benny, people realized he had something special, effortless charisma and razor-sharp timing. By 1962, he took over The Tonight Show, and for 30 years he was untouchable. But offstage, Johnny was different. He was intensely private, almost painfully so. People who thought they'd gotten close discovered they'd barely scratched the surface. He controlled everything, what people saw, what they knew. He hated losing control on his show or in his life. If a guest talked over him or didn't give him the last word, you could feel the temperature drop. The smile stayed, but something shifted. Johnny was married 4 times, each marriage a story of distance and collapse. His first wife married him before fame, but as his star rose, so did the gap between them. His second marriage looked glamorous from outside, but behind closed doors, it was a battlefield. His third marriage followed the same pattern. By the time he married Alexis Maas in 1987, something had changed. That final marriage was quieter, more private, and it looked like he'd finally found peace. But some wounds couldn't heal. His son Rick struggled with substance abuse and legal troubles. When Rick died in a car accident in 1991, Carson was devastated. The man who made America laugh suddenly looked fragile and broken. When Carson retired in 1992, he didn't linger in the spotlight. He just disappeared, moved to Malibu, spent time on his yacht, and refused almost every interview. He wasn't bitter, he was just done. Emphysema from a lifetime of smoking caught up with him. He passed away in 2005, slipping quietly away just like he'd lived his final years. No fanfare, no long goodbye, but his legacy was cemented. In 1987, he'd received a Peabody Award for 25 years of hosting, and by the mid-70s, he was the highest-paid personality on television. His influence shaped everyone who came after. The monologues, the desk bits, the celebrity banter, it's all Carson's original recipe. Johnny Carson was a man of contradictions. On stage, magnetic and quick-witted. Off stage, reserved and sometimes cold. He could launch careers with a wave and destroy them with silence. He shaped how America ended its day for 3 decades, yet remained a mystery to almost everyone. He left no memoir, gave no tell-all interviews, just the echo of laughter still playing in reruns, reminding us that once upon a time, one man ruled the night absolutely. And if you crossed him, even accidentally, you learned that in Johnny Carson's world, silence wasn't just golden, it was devastating.